throughout the week and really for the last week, Shedeur Sanders has been the talk of the town for the Pittsburgh Steelers after he came to Pittsburgh for a pre-draft visit, then jumped on numerous podcasts to talk about it immediately afterwards, had plenty of good things to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers. News out of the building was that the Steelers were impressed with Shedeur Sanders. Mike Tomlin seriously likes this kid, could see him as the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers, fits a lot of what Arthur Smith is looking for in a quarterback, although you don't really draft a quarterback to fit your offensive coordinator, especially one who interviews for head coaching jobs every year. Instead, you draft a quarterback that you think, well, could be a franchise quarterback for years to come. The Pittsburgh Steelers think to some degree that can be Shedeur Sanders. But there was competition, a lot going on before today on who's going to draft Shedeur Sanders and if the Pittsburgh Steelers would even be given a shot at the Colorado quarterback at 21, if they would be willing to trade up to go get him. Well, we've got news on both. We're going to start with number 3, and that is the New York Giants, who are a team, along with the Cleveland Browns and the New Orleans Saints, to definitely swoop in and draft Shedeur Sanders in the top 10 of the NFL draft. I don't think that would come as a surprise to anybody. The Giants worked out Shedeur as a private workout, but also did the same with Jalen Milroe and other quarterbacks that they have interest in the second, third, and so on in the NFL draft. Shedeur was the biggest name, obviously, because he's the first quarterback that's assumed to go in the NFL draft outside of Cam Ward. But from what their GM, Joe Schoen, I'm terrible at names, we know this, said today, maybe the New York Giants are out on good old Shedeur Sanders, saying this, quote, in a press conference, with the signing of those two players being Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, I think we put ourselves in a position where I don't think that's mandatory. Obviously in reference to selecting a quarterback 3rd overall in the NFL draft. The two guys we signed have played a lot of ball. I do think we upgraded the room compared to where it was a year ago. I think the guys that we have, Tommy DeVito is still in there and won games for us too. He's still developing. So we are happy with the makeup of the room right now. I think, in my opinion, massive news. A huge quote from the guy who ultimately makes that call at the end of the day, along with the head coach, and sits there in that war room and dials up the phone number to say, Roger, this is who we're taking. And it doesn't seem like Shedeur Sanders is on that list, that they're comfortable taking a Russell Wilson and a Jameis into the season, who they paid $21 million to for the former Steelers quarterback, and saying in the 2nd and 3rd round, we can go after a bigger named quarterback and not have to worry about it so much. Makes a lot of sense. And if I'm the Giants, I'm sorry, but Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter makes way more sense to me than a Shedeur Sanders. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at it going, I hope that's the truth, because if we want Shedeur, well, he's got to get past New York. That's just the beginning of this, because the Giants eliminating themselves is huge news for the Steelers, huge news for anybody who's hunting down a quarterback right now, because you look at it one of two ways and say, Shedeur's falling past number 3, which means the next target is number 9. And if you're the Steelers and you're looking deeper in the draft, if you're saying Shedeur isn't going to be the guy, that we're okay with him going to the Saints, they got to get a quarterback somewhere. And the Giants have made it known they want to get a quarterback, but later. They're okay with 2nd, 3rd round guys. Maybe Jalen Milroe, maybe Jackson Dart, maybe Tyler Shuck. Names on the Steelers' radar that if the Steelers hold off, they know are going to be gone by the time they pick again at 83. Changes your thoughts, because the Steelers have two arguments, and that is go after a 1st-round quarterback or wait it out till the 3rd round. They're probably going to pick a player at that position by the 4th. The Giants might take somebody off the board that's more realistic to them than a Shedeur Sanders is, even if Shedeur Sanders is the biggest name of the crop that the Steelers could go after. So how do they handle it? Where do they approach it? Well, one approach could be moving up in the NFL draft and going after Shedeur Sanders after he passes the New York Giants. And how do you do that? You move to 8 with the Carolina Panthers to jump the New Orleans Saints, who now need a quarterback because Derek Carr is on his way out and won't play this season and got guaranteed all of that money for him to sit on the bench. And now chances are he's done as a Saint, but the Saints need a quarterback. Are they comfortable with Spencer Rattler? I don't know if I would be. At number 9, is somebody more enticing going to be there for the New Orleans Saints? Maybe. But if a team wants to call, aka the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Carolina Panthers, who sit 1 in front of the Saints at number 8, well, they're open to it. According to Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, quote, Panthers GM Dan Morgan said his phone didn't go nuts after the news broke of Derek Carr's shoulder injury, despite holding the number 1 pick right before the Saints. But he sounds like a guy open to offers. Morgan said, quote, we'll be waiting if somebody wants to come up. There will be a lot of people that say, don't even think about it if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I will say this, for the right price, if you want to move up to 8, if you're Pittsburgh, there's an argument to be made. There's an argument not to be made. But if we're going to be very honest, trading up for a quarterback could be on Pittsburgh's radar. It certainly could be. Just thinking logically, thinking realistically, the Steelers could view this as, yeah, we're going to go get our guy at number 8. We're okay with that. What would it cost to move up? I don't know. Maybe your first next year and a third this year or next year. Maybe a first and a second next year, plus this year's first, obviously. That's probably all it would cost to move up 13 spots to go ahead of the Saints to get your guy in a draft that isn't really loaded, in a draft that won't have. That's the other part of this is number 8's there. The Panthers are open for business, but that business will only be the Pittsburgh Steelers. They would be the only team that called and said, we've got to jump the Saints to go get our guy, because the other 2 guys, the other 2 teams that could be competing for Shedeur Sanders, they just passed him up. They just said, we're good. The Giants, we don't want him. We got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston's out here dancing with crabs. We're good. Life is fine. We're okay. Tommy Meats. He's over here. Tommy Cold Cuts. Excuse me. Didn't mean to disrespect like that. The Browns, they're all in on Kenny Pickett. They want Kenny Pickett to be their guy. So it's the market for the Panthers are the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if they're comfortable enough saying, we'll take a first this year and a first next year, plus maybe a third, sounds good. Maybe a second, sounds good. I have a feeling Omar Khan would con artist his way into this somehow and make it look better than it's supposed to be. But a first and a second plus this year's first, yeah, they'll go after that. Maybe that's all it would take. And if that's the case, the Steelers, I'm not saying it's likely, but it's on the table. And it'll remain on the table right up until the draft. Here's my counter argument to that whole situation. If you're moving up to pick 8, you got to think Ashton Genty's on the board. You got to think Will Johnson's on the board. You got to think maybe Mike Green is still on the board. And I'm just talking phenomenal athletes that the Steelers might have some interest in. Jalen Walker, if I'm getting his name right, out of Georgia, the hybrid linebacker, still on the board. There will be names. There will be lots of names. McMillan might still be on the board. Mason Graham might still be on the board. And if you're going to sit there and say, we're going to go up to 8, well, let me tell you, there are a lot more players, a lot better players to trade up to 8 for than Shedeur Sanders. And if the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at this, going, we got to go get our guy, that's troublesome, because you don't trade up in this draft for a quarterback. You don't even think about trading up in this draft for a quarterback. You shouldn't even consider it, because in this draft, you could find a quarterback that is maybe a slight degree worse than the quarterback you're going to trade up for at 21 and not have to give up anything. and be totally content with where you are and really not miss out on anything. To trade up to 8, look at, I think the Saints picking at 9 to not move and taking Shedeur, risk worth taking. The Steelers at 21, risk worth taking. Big one, barely even a risk. Number 8, and you're giving up compensation for it, you better 100% know Shedeur Sanders is going to be a franchise quarterback. And this is not a shot in the dark, and this is not an overreaction. You're not DK Metcalfing it, where you're saying, well, we wanted Brandon Ayuk, but now we have to give up anything we can to make sure that DK gets a job done. And we get DK. We get a superstar wide receiver. You can't do the same at quarterback. You can't. If the Steelers are smart about this, they don't move up to 8. And if they're willing to move up to 8, well, they better be going to get somebody way better than Shedeur Sanders with that 8th pick in the draft, because it makes zero sense to trade up for a quarterback and take a guy where if you're comfortable with Jackson Dart, if you're comfortable with Tyler Shuck, if you're comfortable with Jalen Milroe, wait it out. Wait it out, give up less, have less pro readiness, I would say, but maybe one small tier less of talent overall. I just don't think it works. And on the same time, the Steelers still want Aaron Rodgers. And if you go into this draft and you think Aaron Rodgers is your guy, you're telling me you're giving up the future to go get Shedeur Sanders and put immediate pressure on Aaron Rodgers. I think that works two ways. I think if the Steelers did trade up for some reason, it's a clear sign they're out on Aaron Rodgers. They don't, why? You're essentially telling the world, and it's ironic that it's the 8th pick in the draft, we are going to do to Aaron Rodgers what the Atlanta Falcons did to Kirk Cousins. That is what our plan is. Because Rodgers is already coming in here with the situation that's a PR nightmare, because he's waited so long and half the fan base is looking at it going, I don't even want him here. Get him out of here. Doesn't even matter. You got people chanting from the rooftops, make it Mason. Give Mason the job. He deserves the job. You're telling me you draft a quarterback at 8. At 8. That's going to look good in training camp. That's going to look good in the preseason, because everybody looks good in the preseason. Everybody looks good at training camp. Noise is going to be loud. And you essentially tell Aaron, you don't want to come here because it's a bad idea for you. It was a good idea for you a week ago. It's a bad idea now. It's a bad idea now. I just think it doesn't work at all. And if the Steelers, who we'll get into good old Mark Kaboom here, believe that Aaron Rodgers is already coming to Pittsburgh, that a deal is in place already, there's just no chance almost that they would consider moving up, because it puts all of that pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and their draft plans are not changing because of Aaron. But I bet you the sense of urgency that would get them over the edge to say, yep, we're going to call Carolina and get a deal done, relies a little bit on Aaron Rodgers and their thoughts on him.